Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is September 23rd, Tuesday, September 23rd. And today we're talking about, well, the title is Smarter Than the Source, How LLMs Transcend Human Expertise. And I think it's really about, can an AI trained on flawed human knowledge become smarter than its teachers? And actually, before I wanted to begin this, it was very funny where right before the show, I said, hey, wait a minute, who's going to post? And then Beth said, you are. And then it cut off. And then we're hosting. And I was like, that's fantastic. Okay.
Perfect clarity in that answer.
No, it was really funny because if Andy started doing it, then I started doing it, and then it'd be like then what happened? It'd be both pause, then it'd be awkward silence, and then it'd be like you go, no, you go, and then it'd be more awkward. So at least it wasn't as awkward. Okay, so AI trained on flawed human knowledge. Now, which is interesting because I've always been telling all our clients and everyone else that, you know, when you're engaging with a large language model, essentially it's trained on the corpus of human knowledge, mostly through the internet, through books, sometimes stolen books. Anyone get that reference? And then other things that it's been ingesting, right? So, but I think there was a Nate Jones video on GPT-5, and he was the one that mentioned how this GPT-5 is one of the more latest models that was trained, that had a significant training from AI data, right? Which led to for people having difficulty prompting it because it wanted to overproduce, and it's quote unquote trying to impress another AI model. So I think of that too as the early glimpses of AI kind of training itself indirectly through all the AI generated content that's being generated from everybody. So, and I remember there was a term for this, curse of the recursive, where AI trained on AI data is supposed to become worse. But haven't and I know this show is not about AI training on AI data, but haven't a lot of the major AI model labs have actively said we have used AI training data for said model, whether it's through a post-training and pre-training as well. So anyway, that was one piece. And then I thought, when you look at, hey, what does flawed human knowledge mean? Does that mean the biases that we have, all the negative things that human thoughts, human actions, does that what it means? Or is it incorrect knowledge or fragments of knowledge that we yet haven't filled the gaps in, and maybe hoping AI to fill those gaps in? So that's kind of the first part of the conversation here today.
Yeah, so let me just frame this as the idea and the term of art in this area that's part of this paper that was the motivation for this show is called transcendence. And that means transcendence above the data. Like, how does a single LLM generate a response that isn't mere regurgitation of this vast collection of data? There's something that it can do that makes its response better than what any one element of its training data represents. So it's not just retrieving, it's assembling this vast collection of data into a response that's exceeding or transcending what any one contributor to that data, the human experts whose data is sitting in there, it's achieving something that's above and beyond that. And so the idea of this ability is that there's something else happening here, and it's not clear that the designers of the LLMs actually instilled these particular skills, but they just seem to be emergent skills that are part of what happens when you give a very vast computational engine vast knowledge, like the number of trillions of data points that are ingested by these models is just enormous. And somehow they can retain those. And then they synthesize this into something that's above what any one retrieval action might have assembled. Or it's not just regurgitating its data, it's doing some other things. And so the paper that we're discussing here today has 3 different skills, they call them. And let me just recite those first, just as further background for what you just said, Carl, and what the first element of this discussion should be about. And the first one is, okay, you've got this vast collection of data, and there's all kinds of levels of quality of that data. Some of it's from a real expert who's spent their life, reading about, discovering, doing research, experimentation, etc. And there's also some documentation from somebody who just kind of spouted, some nonsense about it. And those things have to be denoised. So what it does is it does a combination of things, like it can look at all of those things and average them out, right? And say, okay, well, the crazy stuff on the wisdom of crowds left and the crazy stuff on the wisdom of crowds right is going to be set aside, and we're going to kind of focus on what are the ones that are more central, using a kind of centrality principle about that. So either through averaging or by focusing on the data in its repository that is clustered around the best and least fringe guesses, all of that lets it kind of digest it in a way that focuses on the ones that are, probably smarter than the rest. The second one is selective focus. And that's kind of evaluating the actual sources of the data for their quality. So it's picking experts. So not just averaging this out in the first step, but actually saying, okay, well, this person, they talk about this frequently, and they always seem to be around the right answers. And so I'm going to pick that expert when I get a question about this subject. So that's this selecting a master consultant within my data on the question that you've asked me. So it has that kind of discrimination. It's not going to just give you an answer that comes from somebody because they had a volume of content about it, that they're highly represented in the data. It's going to focus on selecting experts who seem to have the right idea. And then the third skill is this idea of solving the response by connecting dots across many such little forays into the data and synthesizing a response using its, sort of mechanical reasoning capabilities to combine all of its understanding in what are called representations in the deep neural network, to combine those into a novel conclusion and then present a response that is better than what the response of any one of the human experts represented in there could do. Why? Because the founding principle of this is that it has immediate access to everything that every expert and every non-expert has contributed in the form of human knowledge or not so smart knowledge in the corpus of data that these things are being trained on. And we're talking now about just a very single model, like building a frontier model and putting all this data in it. And yet it actually has these skills that allow it to transcend human competence and intelligence on any subject, because it has access to a wide range of contributions to that subject. I don't know if that's helpful, but So anyway, rephrase your question now, Carl. So I can kind of take a shot at, or Beth can take a shot at a comment on that.
It got me thinking a little bit more too, though. How much does post training, and then so there's post training, but also everything that we, or like how people use it, how is that part of it too? Because that has to play a big amount, because yes, you can pre-train, you can post-train, but until you put it out and what people use it for. And I also have to think we should be including not just large language models, because we do more and more with audio and video too, right? There's more pure, even just like the in terms of music, in terms of art, in terms of creative design, all those things that people are using a Canva for, all the things people are using a Veed, a Midjourney, right? 11 Labs. That's also, I think, part of it too, because you could say that would be part of the human knowledge. In fact, could be, you could say,
Yeah.
even more important.
I want to just jump in on that and say, yes, yes, yes. This is related to another aspect of the selection of experts, which is the fact that there are multiple types of human intelligence, right? There's not just one narrow thing that is intelligence that's verbal, right, or logical. And there's a guy named Gardner, I think, who has worked on this as a thesis for his entire life. And it's this theory of multiple intelligences, and there are 9 of them. There's linguistic, which is really what we're talking about when we're talking about these transcendent capabilities and retrieving written data, right? And then composing written data. That's a linguistic kind of intelligence. But the reasoning aspect is a second type of intelligence, which is logical mathematical intelligence. And I'll just rattle off the other ones. One is spatial, and this will be important. Spatial intelligence is a key element of human intelligence, because we live in a 3-dimensional world and we have to navigate it without bonking our heads constantly. And this that's going to be much more important as we get to embodied AI and robotics, right? When we put intelligence in them that's about spatial understanding. And then there's kinesthetic intelligence, also a key element of what will be a part of robotics. So it knows that, force feedback is something I have to pay attention to, because some objects will block me because they're too hard and too heavy, and other objects will yield to me, but they also might be damaged. They might be injured as a result of the force that I apply to them. So there's this bodily sense, kinesthetic awareness of what you're touching and what your stance is in that space. Musical intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, really key to assistance, right? And then intrapersonal, that's do I have a real knowledge of myself? And that starts to touch on this whole range of ideas about consciousness. And then naturalistic intelligence. What about the real world and the nature that I'm environmentally encompassed by? And existential intelligence, which is, okay, what's the meaning of existence? So yes, there's all these other parts of this that aren't purely represented in LLMs alone. And now we're starting to see video, right? Video generation, better and better assembling visuals that match with our expectations about reality, because it has a higher order of physical intelligence, physics intelligence, and it is representing things with more fidelity to what actually would show up in our visual field if it were in the real world. So that I wanted to add to that. I really got your point there.
Yeah. And what part of what you're talking about is the third transcendent skill or technique that they discussed in the paper, which was generalization. And generalization is really just being able to take a pattern that you recognize in one circumstance and apply it in another, right? And if you've watched a kid figure out how a light switch works, which is what my history is, but maybe kids do that with remotes now, right? Like if you watch a kid interact with an environment and see that something happens in one space, you will watch them go and recognize that in another room. Does the light switch in the other room respond to my activity? That is acquiring knowledge that's recognizing a pattern, the pattern of the remote or the light switch, and testing whether it behaves the same across things. Now, if it's a latent pattern, it's a pattern that only AI can recognize, we can't recognize it, it's new knowledge, it's amazing, but the underlying piece is likely still the same. You also experience this you're trying to train your dog to sit and stay with you in your living room, and then you go do it at a park. The dogs don't generalize as quickly as you would like them to. Totally new environment. That word doesn't mean the same thing out in the park as it did in the house. Way too many things to pay attention to. But what I think is there are improv techniques that also are funny because you're imposing a pattern. The example that we give in classes is the first scene is a discussion between accountants about pulling money into reserves. The second scene might be between squirrels talking about hoarding nuts, right? But the reason that's funny is because it's basically the same conversation. You're just going to a different environment. What I think is interesting about this is that's also hallucination, right? Like it's only skill generalization, or it seems like it's skill generalization when it's desirable. Because when it's not desirable, we start talking about misalignment and those kinds of things. And I just want to be clear that embedded in all of this is the bias that it aligns with what humans want. And when it doesn't align with what humans want, we use different terms.
I love this last little point you made, which is that hallucination is like a kind of generalization. It's applying something that is, seems to match, but incorrectly, and making an error in the process. So when we think of generalization as a key human intelligence skill, we want that to be correct generalization, right? And you watch. I'm observing a 2-year-old right now that can apply something that he has learned over here, but inappropriately to something else. And that's an incorrect generalization. No, that one doesn't apply in this context. And I think you voiced that really well. But the thing that really flashed for me here is we're really talking about in discussing transcendence and these skills within a single LLM or other models that are achieving, a synthesis of lots of different understandings in order to do something that's more and more faithfully representing what ought to happen in the real world. We're talking about this progression to artificial general intelligence. And AGI, or the general part of that, I think is really rooted in this idea of generalization. What they mean by artificial general intelligence is that is the attainment of some level where it can take knowledge and understanding and apply reasoning and apply it in novel contexts. And that's a skill that humans have. And that's what we mean when we talk about AGI. It's not just, it matches our skill on a math quiz. It's about this ability to generalize.
I think the other thing that is that has sort of come through in some of the research is harmless generalization or harmless pattern recognition. And I'm trying to remember where the research came from, but recently there was, yeah, I'm looking, there we go. Recently, research came out, and I'm sorry, I don't see, yeah, no, it's Anthropic, I think, that a preference, right now what we're talking about is also a generalization pattern, but a preference can be transmitted between a trainer AI and a student AI. AI is training the teacher AI is training the new AI as much, if not more, as the original data that was used to train AI in the very beginning, which was all of human writing, which wasn't all of human writing, but yeah, many different shows, go back and watch. But Anthropic saw that a preference for owls could actually be transferred from a teacher to a student when that wasn't a part of the training data at all, right? It was, and in fact, owls as a concept was not part of it. AI trains AI with tokens, right? So it doesn't say owl at all. It's a series of numbers that represents owl or represents the letters. I don't even know how that turns into things. But that was a latent effect, right? Somewhere there is a pattern that got transmitted between the trainer AI and the student AI, and that preference was embedded even though it wasn't part of the training. And that for me is this, like, are we calling it training and transcendence and better because we're only looking at the things that are desirable out of this? Because I just have this sense of like, hey, when you do stuff where you haven't really tested all of the results that happen, and you're like, cool, look, we got the one result. I start to question things, and part of what I was wondering, had a big conversation with Perplexity about gluten and the sort of urban myth, I guess, is that there's more gluten in American wheat than there is in European wheat, which is why if you're sensitive to gluten, you can eat bread in Europe, but you can't eat bread in the US. And that's something that lots of people say. Turns out more complicated than that. Of course it is. But people do have people who have problems eating bread in the US have different experiences in Europe for a variety of reasons. It's more different kinds of wheat. It's not as genetically modified. It's also not exposed to the same pesticides that wheat is exposed to in the US. There's lots of different pieces of that, but that is an unintended consequence, right? Because the wheat was modified in the US to be pest resistant and drought resistant, I think is the other one. That it was not that, and it was successful that way, right? And that the like, is this going to cause people's gut health problems was not studied until then there was a demand for different ways of producing bread that did not cause this reaction in a population that had enough resources to be paid attention to.
This, when you're talking about this, are we starting to go into like data hygiene? I guess because, okay, so what started going down kind of the path, then Beth disappeared, but it's more of, and maybe Annie, this is where, okay, so I was thinking we've got reinforcement learning through human feedback, right? Then we also, I can't remember, it's on the tip of my tongue, the technique that, can't remember which lab was using it. They don't necessarily use reinforcement learning. They use AI learning for feedback. Do you remember any? I'm sure. Hold on. I'm sure someone in the audience would know this. I'm looking at you, Jude.
But I want to say, I think you're on the right thread here with respect to data hygiene, because, if you think back to 3 years ago when ChatGPT first came out, basically we were just astounded that it could speak. It
Yeah.
understood language well enough to listen to us and then respond. And that was the vast pre-training on all the text corpus that they could collect from the web. But then, that's filled with all kinds of weird biases, and that allowed for because the models weren't sophisticated enough and hadn't yet received any training on sort of reasoning examples, and what's more sensible as a response than not. Then that required that there be new data added in post-training and or in new pre-training sets that would provide a more curated approach. And then, if you remember, we started to hear about mixture of experts. So there was training different models that then got ganged together, but each of the individual models was focused on a certain area. And so there was a curated training data set that was used to do this, the expert in this domain. And I can just vaguely recall that one of the more advanced OpenAI models had 8 different mixed experts in its mixture of experts architecture, and there's an orchestrator agent, if you will, somewhere in that mix that decides which of those experts is appropriate to the query that was just posed by the user. And it's not going to just send every token through every one of its trillions of parameters. It's going to pick that area, that expert area. And that's this second skill that we're talking about today in this transcendence model, which is it's going to be selective about where it addresses these tokens, because it's actually compartmentalized different areas of expertise. And so there's this mixture of experts progression in training data. And once you get to mixture of experts, then you kind of walk away from the idea that you can get to more advanced intelligence by simply giving it more data, including more synthetic data, as you pointed out, Carl. Like there is AI data generated to reinforce to improve the performance of the model in response to queries. So you get more and more careful attention to what we're giving the model. And we're also compartmentalizing it into different areas so that we have a different team working on this little expert that's a part of this collection in the mixture of experts architectures. And that takes me to another whole level, which is we're talking about transcendence in a single model that may be made up of a mixture of experts. So it has different areas of expertise built into it. And within those areas of expertise, it can identify some individuals' references that it considers to be much more expert than the other experts in that area. So it has this selectivity. But now imagine that we talk about transcendence, the final transcendence, being a kind of artificial general intelligence that's not achieved by just one model, but is achieved by many models working together in a society of mind. So society of mind, go ahead. I see you want to.
Yeah, no. So when you mentioned the use of multiple models, you could point out to something like a GPT-5 where maybe not, because it's more of a
there's a
it's a
router in
modem router.
GPT-5,
No,
which is
there's something else. That wasn't it. There was, I can't remember where it was. There was something, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it if it was a large language model that had multiple models working in concert to reach an answer. And maybe it had something to do with I can't remember what model it was. If any of you remember, whether it was recently or several months ago, where there was something that used at least two models. I don't know, something to verify an answer before it comes back to you. Because I think that's where we're kind of moving into, where you have to verify. We're getting into very more complex use cases, more and more, where there's more pressure on. It can't just be one model to provide you an answer. There has to be a smaller model to verify a specific. If you're using it for a specific use case, it'll verify that use case and just that use case, and then provide a response. Am I still talking? I swear it was.
Well, there've been a couple of things. First, I disappeared. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do it.
Back.
Excellent. The Carl did not get me. That's excellent. The Carl effect of being bumped. So I think we've seen that come back and back a couple of times. I think I remember probably a year and a half ago, there was a design, there was an image that showed like a very tall robot, but a very small robot next to them, right? And the small robot only job was to make sure that the tall robot was doing what you wanted it to do. And it was akin to keeping elephants in pens, in enclosures that as a small elephants, they couldn't get out, right? And as large elephants, they could do all sorts of things, but they still they still respected the limits that they had when they were small elephants exploring the world. Recently, I think they added, it may have been OpenAI added something as part of their teen interventions so that the model doesn't encourage behaviors that are detrimental to developing brains, like saying unaliving is an excellent idea, which is where I remember that story coming out, that they instituted a check, and that check was going to be another model designed to make sure. Is that what you're remembering, Carl?
I think so, but I also had something in my mind that I felt it was kind of like that. But you know what, moving forward though, I think it has to be something like that. I don't think it'll be enough that one model will just answer you. There will be multiple smaller models helping it, whether it's the AI providers who have that, or probably some third party you can install as a plugin to. And if I think it even makes more sense if you're in a very specialized field where you need either something to validate or augment your AI responses, either for accuracy or just additional information that maybe a bigger model can't just provide. Right? So
It's
yeah.
I think that Sakana's information, as we go through looking at the development of ways of training and knowledge emerging, the first project that we learned about with Sakana in my memory is the evolutionary model merge, which was combining two models that had specific sets of information. One was and I believe in the Japanese language and Japanese art and iconography, maybe. I think there was also a math version, but they combined models that each had a piece, and it created. They did a bunch of them, right? Like the first time making the recipe did not necessarily yield success, but over time they got to a model that would generate, I believe, Japanese art, right? So it was a visual model. Andy, are you remembering, Carl?
Yeah, I do remember this, and and the whole idea of merging weights is
Mhm.
a much less expensive process. So that if you take this sort of distributed expert architecture idea and you say, I can focus on building a single model that's small, but it's really well trained in this one area, then there's a way mathematically to combine that with another model. And the one that I remember was that, yeah, this one's got Japanese language and this one's got math. And we've trained them separately. And now we merge them. And that merge process is just a computational process. It's it's compute efficient. And so you get a model that comes out of that in a kind of a genealogy that has the inheritance of the knowledge and skills that were in both of those models. So yes, and that's this evolutionary approach that Sakana did a long time ago now, but they've continued to advance that capability.
Right. So there's an article from July 1, 2025, Sakana AI. If people want to find what we're talking about, I'll also put it in the chat. So evolutionary model merge came out in March of 2024. The July one was test time scaling and ensemble. So that was more of not merging everything into one just one unit, right? So you created one new model. Now you are potentially creating connections between models in this kind of way. Maybe some of these are specialized, right? But you're also increasing the connections between them. At least that's what it looks like on the diagram that I'm reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is an important thread. The idea of trying to merge models into one model that has, extended capabilities that are inherited from their ancestors, that's different from what I think where we're going now, which is we're talking about a collaborative system that's made up of expert agents that are addressable by other agents. So that this idea of communication between models that's permitted and expected is a key part of how we arrive at an AGI that's in this distributed computing model where you have many agents and many options for expert agents that are out there. But a key element of that then is the protocols for interaction and communication among these models. Because if you're going to have a multi-agent system that's going to operate, there's going to want to be an agent-to-agent, process, just like there is right now. If you watch one of the primary agents like Manus or GenSpark, or now the GPT-5 agent, and if you watch and you open up the thread that shows what it's doing, it's maybe going out and searching this, it's reading this, and now it's changing its plan that it developed at the first part in terms of what it was going to go research, and it's going to now go out and find something else and add that to it. Well, imagine that not being a part of a single agent like GenSpark, but rather now you have an agent that's an orchestrator agent that's going to consult with and interact with many agents available on the web, if we can continue to call it the web, and then they can influence one another. They can provide information that's more expert in the area that is the subject of inquiry by the orchestrator agent, and it can exchange messages, and eventually those distinct roles that are all out there collectively are presented to users, us as humans, as a response from our orchestration agent. And so that orchestration agent it's repping it's repping a much broader reach, just like a single LLM today is repping a much broader reach than any one human could consume. Now we're moving to a different model entirely, which is this collaborative system of specialist agents that are navigating other agents' knowledge and bringing that back for your benefit. It's collaborative problem solving instead of just like a human team, right? A human team is better than the output of any one member of the team, but it has to be somehow synthesized in the collaboration and the contributions of each member of the team, combine to deliver a superior response to what any one member of the team can do. Same can be true of agents, and that's going to be actually quite soon. I think it will be the case that a team of specialized agents with autonomy and these skills that we're seeing developed within the world of AI will far exceed the capabilities of any human team, in part just because of the speed and breadth of computational access to multiple agents and multiple domains of knowledge, and no human team could ever get there. But we're not going to find ourselves in competition with them, right? They're going to be our assistant.
Yeah. Well, here's like a practical use case. So I'm doing a lot of work in Cursor with Claude Code, especially on specific folders and files. Now I've built some sub-agents to do certain things. I can see where I have these sub-agents not just going out and do specific things, but going out and taking specific information for me through MCP and feeding it back to my Claude Code, and through persistent memory and beyond, essentially teaching my instance of Claude Code in Cursor whatever I'm asking it to do, right? So like I have one sub-agent to do invoice consolidation. I have one agent to do payroll consolidation. I have one agent to do I don't know, whatever, trucking consolidation, trucking hour consolidation. And so, but then these agents I can go above and beyond, because now through MCP, I can ask it to do more things like, oh, I want you to go research the average contractor amounts for, this specific task. Now I want you to apply that knowledge to the determination of how many contractor hours this company needs to do this. Whatever that stuff is, it becomes more and more, which then you go, oh, now I want to automate that. So every month it goes out to do that and then resets that counter or whatever for what I'm trying to do. But then on top of that, that whole knowledge that it's doing is now my Claude Code. When I say, hey, for another client, for another folder, I'll be like, hey, I want to create a sub-agent. It isn't starting from scratch. It's like, hey, would you like to pull? Would you like to just do done in invoice? Like yes or no? No, because it's completely different industry. Yes is literally a different client, but they do the same thing. So I think we're getting bits and pieces of that, piece by piece by piece. For like, I think they're putting the building blocks of that. You can't just say, hey, I want you to do this, learn this, and make sure it's not that smooth operation, but you can kind of configure it piece by piece by piece. And I think we're getting pieces of that it's really interesting that the memory piece was actually a very, very, especially for more advanced users or power users, it's really, really helpful as you progress more and more, because your expectations of what the tool can do gets greater. Because I'm hearing from people like, oh, can it remember? Like language is all over the place, but yeah.
Right. And the other piece of that is, it doesn't sound like you're using it this way, but the same data that you're collecting, the same patterns that you're doing could be then investigated in a different way. There was a big thing a couple months ago where you were supposed to engage with ChatGPT and say, so what do you know about me, right? What do you know about me, and what are the things that I should be, that I don't know about myself, and what should I do about it? Those sorts of things. That's based on the pattern that it's recognizing, and you're asking where are the gaps, right? So we've been doing this invoice process for this whole time. What is the question I'm not asking you, right? What are the things that you give it a goal, right? We want to improve efficiency by whatever percent, like where would you start? The other piece is that generalization piece, right? We're having great success with this business. What are businesses that are like this in the way that they approach the service and do the thing that I'm not thinking of because it's not this specific business? And then right now you get your overlap of being able to generalize out to a business that's going to have the same patterns in it or similar enough patterns that it's not going to be a big deal to service that as well. But it's not something that humans would come up with because they're not, from a human looking at it, similar at all, right? And I think that's the place, Carl, where stuff also starts to, it gets more efficient, it gets longer tail memory, which is part of the efficiency, but then it also gets more creative sort of on your behalf in a way, or it can if you ask for that. But that is then the human in the loop piece, because it's not going to volunteer its creativity without a prompt asking for that.
So
and when it does, we say, what the hell? I did not ask, right? That's bad creativity. That's hallucination. I did not ask for that. Don't go there.
Well, to take what you just said and let's apply it even in real life to more real. Recently, we just saw Meta launch their, I don't know, dating app, like AI dating application. So it'd be very curious to apply what we just talked about to, okay, let's walk this through then. Let's talk this through. You now have, I think, I forgot what the specific function was. It would go out based on what you're looking for, go out and find you a match, right? Without you having to go find it yourself. You know, you don't have to filter anything. That agent goes out and finds. And then brings you the match. Now, while we're talking about this from a dating angle, let's think about it from, there's multiple uses for this. As it goes out and finds your matches, right? And then you have the ability to, I can't remember, was it swipe or call or connect, whatever it was. I'm not sure. The question is, does that agent now learn from what you've swiped, what you've accepted as what you're looking for versus no? Or does it just restart again? And it's kind of a dumb agent where it's sort of like a filter and it kind of finds, or does it actively or semi-autonomously keep finding based on criteria, or find the opposite of what, or maybe it's a negative, right? I'm not looking for this, and it goes out and finds that, and then you don't have to do any of that work. And it only works if, again, the match. This actually makes to me a lot of sense from a functionality perspective, because in the case of a normal dating app, those things don't make sense because essentially they're running themselves out of business, right? They want, any SaaS application wants you to keep paying. Well, if you find a match compatible significant other, you stop paying. Defeats its own purpose. But with something like Facebook, they don't need necessarily to keep going. They have other sources of revenue.
Well, yes.
So this one more thing. The most important part of all of this is the training data that they're getting. That is more important than, sure, you could pay the service and they would collect a fee, but I think that it's more important that Meta gets the data from this in some form or fashion than the $7.99 that you'll pay for this, that's inconsequential. It doesn't mean anything. But the data that they're collecting from all these people typing in who they want to match, and then who it matches, and your response to that match, to me, that is gold data. Because forget, you can you can just see so many ads you can sell based on just that, the knowledge of what you're doing, what you're looking for, which then can be indirectly, it's like, oh, you're looking for this type of person, that means you're this type of person, which means you could potentially buy this type of
Yes.
product, this, right, based on purely that.
And this is my question, because it is Meta, because it is Facebook, which has fine-tuned the art of what it means when your eyeball stays 0.07%. That's a lot, actually, 0.00007% longer on this section of this photo. So my question about the training data is, is you filling out what you're looking for, just like, we just need you to write stuff in the fields because it gives us permission to collect the information from you. And then what we're really doing is the profiling we've been doing the whole time. And to your point, Carl, we give you a 75% match the first time. It's, or maybe even like an 85%. Oh, this is really close. Like, oh, this is excellent. Now I give you a 65% match, 45% match, 70% match, right? You've got me hooked now, trying to get back to that initial success, which was so close. I got really excited about it, and I'm willing to try to get back there, but I'm never leaving.
Yes.
And then you just fine tune that, because that's ads, right? I mean, you're like, it's what you've been doing the whole time.
It's too easy, right? Before your agent just got the Facebook dating agent just found your match. But before I'm going to show you the match, here's an ad. Oh, you swiped yes, you swiped no. Okay, I'll show you another ad. And then we'll go out and find you another match. And then we'll show an ad after three of those encounters. But those 3 encounters feeds us even more data. So it's like, it's kind of essentially what you're getting through Instagram, just regular Facebook app already, just in terms of what you're swiping, what you're not, and any of the reels you swipe. It's literally kind of the same thing.
It is.
You're just, it's finding you the content. It's right. It's like, oh, if you match this type of person, those are the type of profiles you'll see. I don't see it any different than what it is before. Like, now you've just added people to it, right? It's like, whether it's a post, now it's people. Just replace posts with people, and they just need a lot of people on it for it to make sense. But you can see, I think I saw some of the comments are like, I'm so fed up with this, I'm just gonna go try it, right? It's like, I'm fed up with the other apps. Why not allow an AI to match it for me? Because there's no else I could do. Like, I'm having no luck now. So and if an AI does well, that's even crazier.
Right. But it goes to Cambridge Analytica, and like the amount of data that's being collected and what you can influence. We talk about ads because, like, influencing people to buy things is like the acceptable manipulation level, but it's not the only one. And then you're like, oh, okay, so what is this pushing, not pushing, right?
Okay, so here's something even more funny. Okay, well, let's circle it all the way back to what we talked about in terms of training models. So yes, that data is all being trained, but it'd be crazy and not so crazy is they add avatars there, right? Or digital people designed not to necessarily engage with you. So there'll be like one digital individual out of 50. And if you swipe on that digital individual that they create, and it automatically doesn't match back. Like that's the rule for that avatar. But what that avatar is doing is it's a kind of a representation, which then they're test. If I was Meta, I'd be doing this too. I would test that representation of a person to see what the matches are and what are the specific attributes that that is matching to see. That would make the most sense, and no one would know because all it would be is like swipe, not match, move on. But it's like, but it's not, because it's designed to see what are those attributes. And yeah, it'll feed back into helping the matches, but it feeds even more stuff to general meta. And no one would know any different because it's just another profile that will just disappear in a day or two.
Yeah.
I think that that applies equally to the information and entertainment feeds in all social media. You know, there's going to be ultimately, you know, things that are designed by the owner of that, not user generated content, but things that are designed to intercept your attention and grab it. And it's not necessarily going to be advertising. It's going to be for your entertainment, sort of synthetic posts. And that's as as Delma just said in the chat, this is very concerning that there might be that, and I'm not sure it's happening yet, but that there might be avatar, you know, fake, you know, matches that are put forward by an aspiring new dating application in order to give you the experience of seeing things that, you know, oh, this when I go to this app, I see some things that are really interesting, even though they might not be real. I think that would get revealed very quickly, you know, because somebody would be intent on connecting with that false profile, and then it would be exposed, and that I think that might ultimately be regulated out of existence.
That would be the downfall of that, right? Because if you connect with, okay, first of all, it would be dumb for Meta to allow that thing to connect with somebody. Let's just, because that in, and the thing is though, it I can see this happening. They create an avatar to collect information, right? And it disappears every, I don't know, 3 days, whatever. No one matches with it. And it's made to kind of look, it's not over the top, right? It's not over the top in terms of beauty standards. It's not crazy over the top. But what it is there. The funny thing is if something happened and the same avatar is used like 2-3 days later, or 2 weeks later, 2 months later, and people are starting to figure out, wait a second, that's the same person, but it's like 3 months, 6 months, it's like different people, different names. Like, who is this person? And it's easy for Meta to be like, oh, you know, that's just some person who's trying to catfish people, right? Fake profiles. So there was no, but it would be easy to do that. But I'm sure if they do it too many times, you know, it'll be figured out and they'll be called on it. And that there is a high likelihood that damages the whole reputation of the app, because people are like, am I talking to like real people, or is this like one big like data collection for Meta, entirely fake avatars just to collect all information? And no one has actually really met anybody. They've all been ghosted in one form or fashion. I think you could make this a Black Mirror episode, you make this some sort of comedy episode, but like I thought that would be really funny. Like the whole, if you actually talk to anybody, it's like, hey, did you actually meet someone in real life? Nope, there have been nobody met in real life. But no one's going to talk about that too, right? No one's going to say, oh, I have not met anybody in 8 months using Facebook's dating app, because it's kind of a personal thing, right? You're like, oh, like, right, it hits to your sense of being like, oh, nobody wants me. But in fact, it would be Facebook just collecting all that data, and I wouldn't put it past them either.
But this is like that old-fashioned catfishing scheme, right? Like you're
catfishing hundreds of
you're
people.
dating like everybody's divorced mom in her 60s, right? And
Yes.
and you don't know it until everybody has the same story, you know?
Yeah.
It's like just the name of the company that's different.
Yeah.
And before all of this was like traveling salesman, multi-relationship kind of thing, right? Like there is kind of a history to this. But what is different now is the scale and the ability to pattern recognize, to go back to generalization, and to process it all instantly, right? The scale is what is unique about this, both in terms of being able to carry on those interactions, analyze those interactions, generalize, experiment, disseminate what you've learned from the experimentation. Because remember, Meta did experiment with known avatars that were Bob Brady
Yeah,
and football
celebrities.
players.
No one used them. Do you remember that? Like Snoop Dogg, and then all these characters, and no one used them. Was kind of lame, and then they just disappeared.
Right. Oh, but it wasn't Snoop Dogg. It was like Snup Dogg, right? Like they changed the name just
Like the
slightly.
worst.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
to bring this all back in terms of, there's so many different routes that in terms of AI training AI and humans training AI. Any last thoughts, Andy or Beth, before we close it out?
Yeah, just I want to repeat that we're moving beyond training single models to creating a system architecture that is independent agents that will interact with each other and deliver knowledge that it doesn't, it's no longer necessary to have that built into the primary model that you're consulting, because you'll be able to access that via agent to agent interaction. And your example of using cursor and developing specific specialist agents within that context to do certain tasks is a good analogy model for what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I think my final thought is more conversations like this. There was a conversation in the chat about people being willing to engage in this, and can you consent to something that you don't understand, or even more extreme, can you consent to something that you don't even know is possible, right? So many things are possible with AI, and we're in a bubble. And when we walk out of our bubble, I was at an event last night. I'm in Halifax right now. I was at an event last night. Hi, Volta, for all you folks, and it was a lovable vibe coding event, and the demo app was recording an audio message. The AI transcribes it and then gives you a copy button. And that's a fairly simple set of functions, but that was inspirational to the people in the room, right? So like helping people understand what is possible now, and if this is true, what else is true, so that we can get to a place where we are at least informed enough to say yes or no to something. I think we'll be interested to see what the results of Meta's dating experimentations are. But I also don't think they did this before. It's Meta. I'm expecting that they've been testing it some way behind the scenes for a little while before they told us.
All right. What's awesome about this show is we went down the dating app rabbit hole with Transcendence and AI interaction, which is kind of funny. We do this a lot. We have some really good shows the next couple of days. Obviously, tomorrow we have AI news, which we'll cover, which will also talk about Meta's dating app and others. Then on Thursday, we have the CRISPR GPT, which is exciting because if you look at the roadmap, OpenAI's roadmap, level 1, level 2, level 3, which level 3 right now is agents. Level 4 is, I think, innovators, right? The ability to aid an invention and invent yourself. And I think we're starting to kind of move into that level 4 piece, which is interesting. And then obviously Friday, favorite AI happenings. And if you want to continue this conversation, please, we'd love you to have you at the Daily AI Show Community Hub on Slack. And also subscribe to our Daily AI Show newsletter, because we go into even more things that we don't have time to discuss during the week. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Anybody want to take aloha from? You know what? I'll say it. Aloha.